Good morning. I look like there's some jet lag faces here. It's been a long trip around the globe, I bet. I was just checking out the list. There's all the I'm going to name the countries that I saw. Taiwan. Who's the delegates from Taiwan? Indonesia. Selamat datang, selamat pagi. I'm also Indonesian. I don't know if you knew that. Uh, and then I saw Kenya, Thailand. Kenya, Thailand. What are the countries we missed? Pakistan? Pakistan? All right, great. Madagascar. Very cool. Very cool. Innovation can happen anywhere. That's true, right? And I think with the theme that you'll see this week is that the scale, the path to scale, comes through Silicon Valley, right? And I use this phrase a lot, or this talking point a lot in the US. If you want to be in finance, you go to New York. If you want to be an actor, you go to Hollywood, right? And if you want to be an AI, the path goes through here. And this is a lot of the things that Bob and Don were talking about earlier, as far as we have the culture. Professor Barry Katz is going to be talking about ecosystem as well and how important that is moving forward. So that's going to be a consistent theme. So when Bob, actually, speaking of ecosystem, Emmanuel, we did this 3 years ago, correct? 3.5 years ago, and that was pre-AI. And we were talking about data warehouses, data lakes, what's going on with SaaS. I think that was kind of the conversation. Take a wrecking ball to all that, right? and also, what we can get into in our conversation is a lot of the financial patterns that we're all trying to figure out. I know we have a room of bankers here, right? We're going to take a wrecking ball to that too. Meaning there's a lot of stuff that's happening under the currents of the Anthropic conversation, the OpenAI conversation, the SaaS conversation, right? The infrastructure is sucking up all the capital and all the energy in this world too, right? So when we take a look at the different layers, we have, imagine just the different layers of AI. We have software at the top. That's the OpenAIs. Is SaaS going to be gone? Maybe, right? And then right under that, we're going to have the models. That's going to be, all the tools around the models, the LLMs, that's very important as well. But underneath that is the infrastructure layer, right? And that stuff is a little bit more heavy because that's where software technology meets brick and mortar. We got to actually build stuff. We got to build data centers. This stuff at the bottom layer happens in years. The middle layer happens in months. Software changes in days. You guys, who here has started implementing agentic workflow into their organizations? Yes? Days? It changes in days? We thought we were going to go this way. We put it in, and all of a sudden we're going the other way, right? Things change. So a lot of the stuff that we do, so I forgot to introduce myself, but Bill Berry, CEO of IgniteGTM, we're a go-to-market advisor. So a lot of the things that we do in our ecosystem is trying to connect all these timelines, right? At the top layer, we need things in weeks and days. Then the middle layer needs things in months. And then we're trying to connect that conversation into the infrastructure layer. I say that we're all speaking English, but we're all talking different languages. It's true. Like a lot of the bottlenecks we can get into, it's not just capital. It's not just layers. It's not just different priorities, but it's also within the US, within the industry, it's different cultural languages. The data center guys, a lot of times when they talk to a 28-year-old software startup coming out of Stanford, and he goes, I want to build 3 data centers, and the data center guys go, no, you're not. It's just not going to happen, right? So a lot of times we spend our time negotiating in between these layers, talking through the different ecosystems, trying to move the deals forward, right? We can talk about how we do that. So a little bit about IgniteGTM. We're based here in Silicon Valley. I migrated here. We're a nation of immigrants, like Bob said. I'm Chinese blood, born in Indonesia, moved here when I was 10. So for the most part, I walk, talk like a San Jose guy, I think, right? And it's really cool living and growing up here. I use the terms islands versus intersections, right? A lot of times when we talk to our consulting clients, we say we deliver the most value here in our intersection of the ecosystem. We're able to connect dots very quickly. We're able to solve problems. Within 1 or 2 phone calls, we can get down to the heart of the matter of what's going on. We stay in this intersection. We can't get too far into people's islands, into our clients' islands. All the internal stuff about building a company, that's for the clients to figure out, right? But that's really analogous also when you take a look at this room. Silicon Valley is the intersection. This is where a lot of things happen. And yes, failure is a badge of honor. It's the stripes on the tiger. It matters, right? And for us, I always believe in this thought that there's nowhere else in this world where the information moves this fast and this freely in Silicon Valley. And then so the rate of change is highest. And I would say in order to survive and thrive here, the rate of learning has to be equally high. In order for a rate of learning to be high, the humility has to be there too. We can argue as if we were right, but we listen as if we were wrong. Because very often tomorrow we're going to be wrong. It's going to change. It moves that fast, right? So that's a lot about the Silicon Valley ecosystem. What I wanted to do is, I know this is the first opening keynote for the week. You have 5 days. You're going to be talking to a lot of great people. I saw that roster. Honored that you had me lead this off, Emmanuel. Thank you. But what I would want to do is really kind of connect with you folks here as far as give you as much context as possible about what you're about to see for this week, right? So we can go in multiple different directions. We can talk about some of the deals that we're working on that really gets into the infrastructure side of it. How do we fund these GPUs? $100 million seed in the does everybody know what neoclouds here is? Neoclouds? Hyperscalers, neoclouds, right? The table stakes for a neocloud to have critical mass to be effective in this market is $1 billion. $1 billion of GPUs and infrastructure. That's the entry point for somebody to get into the neocloud business. And that's why I'm saying that we can, like when you take a look at the capital, the scale that we're dealing with is completely changed now, right? So we could talk about the deals. If you guys want to see stats, I brought stats, and this is more infrastructure stats. We run industry events. We have AI Infra Summit that we run twice a year. So every single time I do a state of infrastructure, this is what's happening. And every 6 months, that story is different. Well, it's somewhat the same. We still need more energies. We still need GPUs. We're running out of GPUs. I talked to AMD a couple weeks ago, and they said we don't even have to sell any more GPUs because the forecast already exceeds inventory available. So we're going to have a GPU crisis if we haven't had one already. We've been having an energy crisis. We're having a storage and memory crisis, right? So if you didn't lock in your BOMs, your bill of materials with Supermicro, HP, or Dell in June or July, the same hardware that you need to buy is now increased 20 to 40%. So then therefore, you see all the folks, if you're in the infrastructure space and you're providing capital, they're going to come back to you and ask, hey, we got to redo this math. We didn't lock in the prices because storage and memory is another dimension that just increased everything, right? So we can talk about that. We can talk about even the agentic side, what's really happening at the ground level. Ourselves, IgniteGTM, we're 5 years in. We're a team of 14 now. We have 10 agents that are fully every day doing their own functions. We can talk about that. So I just want to make sure that this is as useful as possible for you. We got probably, let's go. Emmanuel, how much time do I have?
We can stretch it a little bit, 3 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes. So I'll go 10 minutes. We can cover the topics that you guys want. And after that, we can just do open Q&A. And I'm here to basically help you get a little bit more context about what you're going to see this week. We can take this any direction that you find useful. Does that sound good? Okay, so who here is investing in infrastructure? Okay, we're not going to cover that topic. What's that?
How do you define investing? Lending is investing?
In data centers or GPUs?
Data centers, NCP.
NCPs, yeah. Neocloud providers, yeah? Yes, so we could talk about that. Who here is investing in the software layer of AI? No? Nobody. Are you sure this is a room of bankers? Okay, we have one. Okay. What, maybe throw out something. What are the top, maybe 3 reasons why you came to Silicon Valley? And then we can address that. Anybody?
You see, that was one of the questions most of the people must have in their mind, that why we are here. Emmanuel is, sending all these kind of, bulletins and,
Seriously,
announcement that you must come to, Silicon Valley and see what's going on, how we can leverage that, kind of experience from Silicon Valley to other countries.
Yep.
From Pakistan, from Thailand, from Madagascar, and from, Guinea. So you have to tell us that, you see, it's not something that we have to copy what USA is, doing. We have heard from, Bob, we have heard from Emmanuel, and even from you, that it's the at the end of the day, the venture capitalist over here, who spends how much amount of money in terms of dollars, and that is huge.
Yeah.
When we compare it with other countries,
Absolutely.
Pakistan or Philippines or.
They provide signals on where the market's going, so you could take that back to your
I
original.
was here 2.5 years ago, and the statistics which we gathered at that point of time was that how many startups during the month they emerged into Silicon Valley. It was in thousands, and how many of them they got succeeded into the real company like Alphabet or Apple.
Yeah.
It's not like it's once in a maybe million. So that is the story. We have to learn that nevertheless the people even in the USA the success rate and the success rate is, I think it's below 1%. I think so maybe it is in decimal, but that is a kind of lesson for the rest of the people, that how you people are going and how we can leverage that kind of technology.
Let me just say one thing directly what you're talking about. In the Silicon Valley, banks have a very important role. I'll just take one second. Silicon Valley Bank was the premier bank in Silicon Valley, helped start tons of banks with all kinds of special. So if you want to make a difference in your own community, a bank can be a critical part along with other key financial institutions. You guys can take major roles in forming your own ecosystems surrounding your communities. We can talk off here during the week. We have a chat with any of you people about that. That's a really important thing. But you might want to have some, from a banking perspective, how AI and how all these things are going to impact, what they should be thinking about. The way that you think about things that are coming their direction to make them more efficient.
Yeah.
You know it's coming.
Absolutely. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about where the markers of what we're seeing and how you could translate that back to your country. Yes.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know. You mentioned you have agentic workflows that you've implemented in your company, right? What those are they working as planned? Did you have to re-engineer your processes?
Okay.
And do the agents actually work end-to-end on their own?
Agentic will cover that. Yes.
Hi, I'm Hokin from Singapore.
Yeah.
I'm keen to hear your thoughts around applications and services.
Okay.
Given that all the focus now is on infrastructure.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, somebody needs to use this infrastructure.
Yes. Okay. So applications, agentic, Silicon Valley as a marker for what's going to happen next, and then bank's role. Yeah. So we'll cover that. Okay. So let's start from the top. I think a good way to kind of do the high level framing is AI is, I think, the most awesome discovery that we've had since fire as mankind, right? And with fire, 2 things can happen. We can burn or we can cook. Helpful or not helpful. And so far, it's been fun. GPT is fun. We get to create images, right? It's been mostly cooking. But I think I think we all need to brace ourselves because there's going to be some burning coming up in the U.S. job market. I think we're going to see high unemployment. It's just the world's going to change. It doesn't really mean doomsday. We're going to have some corrections here, but the world's going to change. So buckle up. That's number 1. Because what I'm saying is, sir, we don't know what's going to happen. We're standing in the front of the line, right? So I think we need to keep that in mind. And then if you really go down to the next level, we think about the services and applications, right? Just had a long conversation this morning, a meeting, and as we implemented we've been implementing 5 months into our agentic infrastructure here internally, the need for a CRM is no longer there. We were just joking. It's like Salesforce just reached out to us going, hey, do you want to take a look at our CRM? And we're like, no. Why? We have our own database. We have our own workflows, right? So SaaS, I think the SaaS apocalypse, I think they call it, right? I think in general that's going to be coming. It doesn't mean it's going to go away, but because the way that we move every day is changing, how you use AI this week was different than it was 3 months ago. So how could you possibly build a business around this puck that's moving all the time, right? So let me touch upon a little bit about the agentic workflows. There's a lot of folks, and so we've seen probably 3 waves of AI software here. Meaning the first one was GPT just came out, let's put a wrapper around it, and then there goes a whole slew of startups. All those are gone. Gone. As soon as GPT 3.0 came, it was gone. So the startups can't evolve fast enough for to keep up with the race, right? So then you have kind of like different versions of this, and then so it's hard. We were in our early years, we were focusing on a lot of SaaS startups too. So we were trying to track. We were kind of using the 90% of SaaS startups are going to fail in Silicon Valley, but that's just the ratio. But with AI, it feels like it's a little bit higher than that because it's just moving too fast. So I think the answer is we don't know, because what's really going to happen is we're going to just keep on every day putting a little bit more pieces of AI into our workflows, and it just changes and we don't know, right? 90% MIT study says in 2025, 90% of AI projects failed in the US. And that's probably true because it was highly experimentative. We work with folks at Chase and Walmart where they have departments, AI excellence departments, being able to implement, right? But they know it's a high failure rate, but it's completely iterative. Every day they're asking, is this working? Is this working? Is this working? Right? So we have a theory, just to talk about your agentic workflow, is that anytime there's a black box that says, use this, it's going to solve all your business problems, let's just throw AI on it. I think that that's always a warning flag for me, because how could you possibly know all the intricacies and the nuances of a particular business, especially a small business like ours, right? So anything that feels like a black box that we're interacting and we get it back, just like your GPT input and output, we resist. Instead, when we do the agentic workflows, we have this theory of an Iron Man suit. Everybody have seen Avengers, Marvel movies? Yes? The Iron Man suit you put on, but the operator's inside, right? And I talked to my partner, Brandon, and I said, you're building this Iron Man suit for me to do this function. Whatever that function is, put together events, put together sponsorship packages, manage our sales funnel, right? But it's a very intimate thing, right? And so when we do these revisions, we do probably 5 or 6 revisions a day, just calling Brandon, go, hey, this is not working, this needs to be tuned up, and it's completely programmed and tuned. And then so now we're 4 months into this Iron Man suit, right? And we're a team of 15 that moves like a team of 50, right? And I think we are a good small scale representation of what it should be from an organization standpoint. Now, you guys are banks, you have processes, you're going to look at solutions and software, and it's a 3-4 months evaluation process. And I think you guys know, in 3 to 4 months, by the end of that evaluation process, the world already changed. You're like, wait a minute, maybe we won't buy that because we're going to buy this. But where do you anchor? I don't know. That's one of the things that you're going to have to kind of make a decision within the organization, your organizations, on how you anchor into that workflow and what tools, what Iron Man suit do you actually build in, right? There's also one thing you can think about is that there's a top-down theory of what it should be, but always encourage the bottom-up innovation for your workers to experiment. Give them a tokens budget. Let them experiment. Let them put their own Iron Man suits on. Make them the central hero of the story. And you will find that there's new innovation that comes from the bottom. right? And there's a lot of the successful large companies, Fortune 2000s here, are doing this bottom-ups and top-down type of approach. So definitely, hopefully that answers your question about agentic. Role of banks. I think that's super important. I know we got a few minutes left here, and then, okay, a little bit of, so one, Ignite has three pieces of our company. We have consulting, we have events, and then another section of the company that we've been very involved with this year is strategic advisory. This is helping neoclouds be able to find $1 billion over the next year. And then, so we're in the middle of that conversation trying to solve problems. We're the invisible middlemen, kind of being able to make these phone calls, right? First, I need $150 million in 30 days. That was just July's challenge. Then after that, we need $1 billion. We need $540 million by December. Oh, also another $500 million for the data center. Great. So we're on the phone all the time with capital partners. Debt, equity, right? Everybody wants to make sure that they have IG-backed off-takers, investor-grade off-takers, right? And that's tough right now because there's a lot of new neo clouds. They don't have that. And then so we have to strategically solve that problem. And we solve it by maybe getting an AMD backstop. That means AMD credit support or NVIDIA's credit support. And we're constantly trying to figure that out. And then right after they got the capital, we need to find, oh, by the way, we need a place to house these GPUs. And then after that, going down the layers and talking to the data center and colo providers, being able to solve that. Now, through that, there's a lot of private equity groups. Not a lot of VCs are playing in the infrastructure space. There's some, I'm not saying there's none, but private equity groups, family offices are participating, especially for the early money, the stage 1 money, because there's a little bit more risk there. But then what we're seeing is traditional banks are also now starting to lean in. These are very high risk profile in a traditional sense, but the GPU market is so hot right now that, it's a lot of them are leaning in. We see the folks like Wells Fargo leaning in and participating in GPU financing. Great. And then what we're trying to do is package up every single one of those data rooms to make sure that we're talking to a bank is different than how we're talking to a family office, right? So I feel like the banks are starting to become more prevalent, as at least US banks in the infrastructure space. But they're not obviously in the front lines, in the frontier of trying to get these neoclouds started. Yeah? We can, 5 minutes, 10 minutes Q&A?
How does China keep Silicon Valley honest?
China. Do we have any Chinese nationals here?
Taiwan.
Okay, great. Yes, we're friends. and I say that jokingly. So, yeah, how are you keeping honest? Man, there's a lot of layers of US versus China. What's that?
GB3 comes out, and it should decimate the GPU idea that the focus is on GPU. This is the one time in technology where the hardware gets all the attention.
Sure. Yeah. Let me tackle that from few different layers. Obviously, everybody knows this is kind of a US versus China thing at a very global level, right? And we're not talking about just technology, we're talking about national security. That's a whole nother conversation. But then you go down to the next layer about commerce and competition. There's a bad reputation in Silicon Valley of Chinese companies taking and copying things, distilling things, right? DeepSeek was one big, right? And even when DeepSeek happened, everybody's like, oh my God, NVIDIA, this is the end of NVIDIA. And then I actually met with NVIDIA that week. She goes, I have people calling me, asking me, hey, I'm sorry to hear about the news. We just had a 10% dip. She's like, that's not real. $6 million of GPUs, that's not real because we see the receipts on this side. It was more than $6 million. So it was a lot of kind of PR hype. So again, that's kind of like always this back and forth between US and China. Now, at the working levels, we actually are doing an event on August 14th here in Menlo Park for Tencent Cloud, a mega Chinese company, right? And they want to be able to bring their tools. But a lot of the work that we're doing and being able to packaging up their messaging is trust. So trust is still waning. There's not a lot of trust. And what we're doing is we're packaging this program to say, yes, once you put together your agentic workflow, you have an inference aggregator, you can use GPT or Anthropic, or you could use the Chinese models too, and it's safe, right? We have to actually put a lot of effort to package that up, that it's safe. And I'm not saying that it's not safe, it's not awesome, it's not functional, but like from a go-to-market perspective, trust is huge. And remember what we just talked about a few minutes ago? The puck is moving so fast that you kind of have to lean on the speed of trust a little bit, right? So if you're making these fast decisions, knowing that you're gonna have to change it in 5 months, you can't, if there's something that's off about that company or that vendor that you're working on, that's gonna be a problem. That's gonna be a problem. You'll pay a premium for that trust. And then there's another talk track about where is enterprise going. By the way, I don't know if that's something interesting for you folks, but that's something that we're always looking at right here at, in Silicon Valley, because this wave, no matter how crazy it is, what we're calling this is the training wave. And there's training, big GPUs, right? NVIDIA, just power hungry. Then we're gonna go into the inferencing wave. That inferencing wave, can anybody guess how much bigger it would be than this current wave? Huge, like 2x, 3x, 10, I think 10, Jensen said 100. 100. So when we go to inferencing, just so you guys know, inferencing is just being able to have an edge. The models have already been built, but on the inferencing now, it's just taking the request and answering based on the current models, right? And then what we do is we look at the patterns of how the cloud era happened. It started with these central data centers, and then after that, it broke off into the edges, smaller, more highly interconnected, closer to the metro areas, right? And then it spawned off things like IoT, CDN, right? Remember that's in the cloud area? We're going to have the same pattern for AI. We're going to have our inferencing edge. That's the age of the drones and the humanoids and the IoT devices. We're working with a project right now where RingCentral, a voice over IP company, some of you guys probably know this, they're going to turn the voice over IP network into an AI edge, where they're going to be able to communicate. The drones are going to be able to communicate with a voice over IP system already built, right? And being able to distribute that. So this edge is going to be about 100x of infrastructure needed compared to what we have now, which is mind-boggling. And enterprise, let's lay out this is really, really important, because no matter what all the neoclouds are doing, no matter what everybody's holy grail is, they want to be able to sell to enterprise. You look at the infrastructure bell curve, the middle bell curve, where all the money is made is going to be how enterprise consumes it, because when the enterprise consumes it once, they'll consume it 1,000 times, right? So everybody's watching for that. And everybody knows that trust, data sovereignty is going to be very important, especially for regulated and compliant industries, healthcare, finance. That data needs to stay here. Amazon has a nice umbrella, but it's expensive, AWS. I can go to a GPU cloud, but I'm out of compliance. I'm kind of need to build that on site. And as soon as they've been working and experimenting with agentic workflows and they hit the ROI, they'll be able to justify building their own private cloud with their data on it, with the right AI, inferencing edge, everything connects, right? That's really where the market's going to be going, between inferencing, enterprise, and edge. Yeah? Questions?
So you think we are still in the training phase, not?
Yes, sir. Still in training, and if you look at the NVIDIA talk points, Jensen's still pushing out the GB200s. These are GPUs. Not there yet. Yeah, I was talking to Cisco the other month. They said, hey, enterprise isn't coming to these private GPU clouds the way that we think it's going to be coming, right? Yes, they're kind of coming, but they're very careful about this, right? And there's another theory. It's probably going to come in through AI transformation. If you look at it, OpenAI and Anthropic, they have something called DeployCo, where they're partnering up with the GSIs, the McKinseys of the world, the Capgeminis, and leading that AI transformation, right? And it'll start with the workflow, it'll start with the edge, and then it's going to have infrastructure implications behind that. So yes, enterprise is not here yet.
Go on the inferencing item.
Yeah.
Worth say that what we're seeing is an explosion of customized silicon to address the GPU shortage and to address what you need for inferencing.
Yep.
So highly customized silicon chips will be coming out over the next year.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So
that's what Kimi did. Before you have inferencing, you have to be able to localize to LLMs, right? So that's going to be a breakthrough there first.
sure.
There's an ongoing, I think, fight in the US over the Anthropic's, the frontier models that are closed, and open models.
Open models.
Right
Yep.
now, we're
So
not
that's-
strong in open models, we're stronger on the other side. But
Yeah.
there's a few companies coming up that are focused just on that. Again, outshoots of the existing companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, employees that I see a need. I'm gonna go out and start my own company.
Yeah, so open versus close, that the conversation is going to keep on going back and forth. I think, obviously the US government wants to regulate a little bit more tightly to make, I believe them when it's, for good, but it's probably a lot more for control. But we'll see, from a Silicon Valley perspective, I think we're very utilitarian. We're going to use what's most efficient, right? The Chinese models, so yes, they're more efficient. They're cheaper. Yes. But trust.
They're localizing.
Sure.
So the thing about Silicon Valley, and the thing is that you listen to Bill right now, but also listen to the subsequent speakers, the M&A people and so on. The dynamics of the ecosystem in Silicon Valley. The big businesses want to dominate. They don't want to do an open source model. They hate it, right? The last two iterations, the HTTP and then cloud. The ecosystem belong entirely to Silicon Valley. So whatever we do in the cloud today, we are beholden to the US model. So AI is the one realm, the third iteration, which the Chinese are now a factor, which they weren't before.
Sure. Yep. And remember the layers. So we talk about software, models, and then infrastructure, right? On the infrastructure side, we're going to go with, like you said, there's going to be heterogeneous chips options, form factors. How do we get AI out in the middle of nowhere, right? That we're going to use the different hardware form factors. And I think if the Chinese models have an entry point, it's going to be on that edge use. But if we're talking about enterprise inferencing, you have that trust barrier that's still there that needs to be acknowledged, right? That just can't be overcome by, it's cheaper. It's just that argument won't work, right?
I mean, that's one view, huh?
Yeah.
You're going to listen to a couple of
Sure.
There are multiple startups now funded. Thinking Machines did open weight model.
Yes,
And
and then
at least I can think of 4 others that have been funded by VCs, open
Sure.
source, just
Yeah.
to get it out there.
thank you.
Yeah. Now, and I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. It will happen, but it's going to take some time.
I just had a question on open source. So can you get, because you need compute, you need data, and you need a kind of infrastructure, right? So can an open source startup ever get to the scale of a frontier model? Because they'll always be limited by billions of dollars.
So this is where the battle is right now.
Yeah.
The open source, they can't even put the open source on your enterprise structure, infrastructure. In other words, you've got to buy a GPU too. So that's where we are right now. The question is, how is the ecosystem here evolving that open source becomes more accessible?
But can they ever get to the scale of a frontier? Because frontiers are putting one.
By that time, you're not interested.
The answer is yes. And they evolve and develop faster because it's open. That's the promise of open source.
By that time, you're not interested in frontier anymore. I think. Yeah.
There's
In that
middle
case,
ground.
SLMs will come into play, the small language model, because that does
Yes.
not require that kind of enterprise level hardware to run on it. So business-specific SLMs will be the target in the future.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Thinking Machines just came out
And-
with an open weight model that is localized in your enterprise.
So the Chinese don't even need to be successful. They call the bluff and then it comes back here and then you're thinking machine. So it sort of keeps the system honest.
Yeah, it does. That's a good
a
way to
lot
put it.
of funding going into these open source startups now.
Okay, good question. We will ask the others as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and then
this guy is big business centric.
infrastructure.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I know Lee's educated guy in the other room, but I'm wondering, as bankers, our clients are gonna be getting into AI all over the place.
Yep.
That's agentic already, yeah.
Okay, their clients are getting into AI. As a banker, how do I need to relate with my customers, from the standpoint of what they're looking for us as a banker, or how do we communicate? I just want, we can't ignore AI, so how do we relate to our customers, and where is it important, what things, most important things we need to be thinking about in working with our customers?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's a good closing. One quick note: when we say that we're deep into our agentic workflow, we're using OpenCloth. That's open source. So we're very open. And if the conversation last week, if we can use the Chinese models for different functions, we will do that with the proper guardrails, right? So I think open source, there's a huge value for that. I mean, I'm not closing that off, but it depends on what layer that you're really talking about, right? Because the conversation changes. Regarding the banks, I would say, I think first, maybe a good takeaway from this conversation is recognize if you have clients wanting to invest in AI, wanting to invest in AI projects, understand their use cases. Does it sound like a top-down use case or a bottom-up use case? Top-down use case sounds like, I saw this on the internet, I think it's gonna change my business, I wanna try it out, I need to, whatever, right? The bottom-up business is, hey, we've been trying this with open source tools and it's been working and therefore we need to, right? It sounds different. So I would say that that's a really big marker on, where you guys are gonna be able to put your support, your capital support into and which projects. And then after that, it's just constantly, we have to keep on talking about this. Nobody has all the answers. We don't know. And hopefully this is the first of many trips that you have here in Silicon Valley, having these kind of conversations, because we have this every day and we're still filled with more questions than we have answers. Yeah, sorry, Professor, I took a little bit of your time.